Welcome to the Talkin Tabletop Podcast, a collection of tabletop thoughts from a growing community of board gamers. And I'm your host, Ryan, from the Mista Rau Gaming YouTube channel. Yes, welcome to the Talkin Tabletop Podcast. I am your host, Ryan, from the Mista Rau Gaming YouTube channel, and I'd like to welcome everybody. If this is especially your first time listening to the podcast, welcome. You're in for a real treat here for us today, because this is a podcast where a whole bunch of different board gamers and tabletop gamers, maybe some content creators, are getting together to talk about anything they want around the board gaming and tabletop gaming hobby. There are so many different types of topics. They could either be talking about reviews, or they're talking about just things that are just really interesting to them, or just some things that have come across their minds lately. That's what this gaming community is all about. All these different perspectives that are coming together and sharing and creating something really wonderful and really positive around the gaming hobby. I really hope that you enjoy this episode. We have some awesome creators lined up to talk to you about literally anything they want, and we got a really wide gambit of topics on tonight's episode. We got Brian Chandler from Colourblind Games kind of segment gone in today. We've got Alex McKenzie from Meeple and the Moose. We've got the Tabletop Express, Chris Barros, and with guest Dan Nixon from the Cardboard Yeti. We've also got Danielle Chan here from her YouTube channel, DaniCha, and we've also got Daniel Anderson from the Tabletop for One YouTube channel, sharing some thoughts around board gaming and mental health. All right, well, I am excited. I can't wait to listen to these. I hope you can't wait to listen to these as well. If you're here just to listen to one particular creator, please make sure you stick around and you listen to all of the creators. These segments were such a joy to listen to during the editing process. So sit back, relax, and you'll hear me again at the end of the episode. Enjoy, y'all.
Hey everybody, this is Brian Chandler at Colourblindgames.com, and following up on last episode's introduction to color vision deficiency and why it matters at game night, I'm going to talk today about some colorblind gaming solutions. We talked last time about how about 4 to 5% of the population has some kind of color vision deficiency, and this can become a significant issue as we try to navigate tabletop spaces at home, at a bar, at our friendly local game store. And that a lot of the practice currently, practiced or not practiced by designers, developers, and publishers right now in gaming can result in some unintentional barriers or confusion caused by some of the colors used or how colors are used in board games. So addressing these needs starts with some basic accessibility principles and continues with some examples, both in gaming and other industries, to help show how we can improve accessibility for colorblind players. And by the way, it makes the experience better for everyone at the table. One thing that we do talk a lot about in accessibility is if we make things, whether it's a game, a traffic signal, anything more accessible for those that have disabilities, then it tends to also make that a more improved experience for everyone. So one example that I've kind of leaned on over the years, a gentleman named Ian Hamilton out in Bristol, England, has identified 3 key principles related to color blindness specifically. The first one is to not use color difference alone to communicate or differentiate information. So we talk a lot about the concept of double coding that helps support colorblind gamers in really all areas, whether it's transportation or gaming or otherwise. For example, Fantastic Factories incorporates double coding provides another level of information beyond color to differentiate some of its game pieces. This has become very common of late. You'll see a lot of games that are using more than one way to differentiate, and not just using color. The second one is checking with a simulator to pick up on some of the contrast issues. I did mention in the last episode that those online color vision tools aren't the best in the world. They don't really do the job fully, but they are sometimes can be a good starting point. And then most importantly, running things by colorblind people to identify issues that you might have missed. Like, we are often more than willing to share our experience. We very much want you to be making products that are more accessible as designers and publishers. The thing is, though, is that, as mentioned before, color vision deficiency varies widely by type and degree. So something one colorblind person might see clearly would still be problematic for somebody else. Really good example for me on this last year was Deep Dive by Flat Out Games and AEG. I had significant problems with that game. I've written about that in a full preview that I did. I've spent quite a bit of time talking to the publisher about that as well, and the designers of that game. Interestingly, though, I also talked to Peter McPherson. Peter's a game designer. Peter is colorblind, and he and I talked about Deep Dive specifically, a game that he had no trouble with. He and I have very different color vision deficiency types. And so it's just interesting that just because, for example, something that I can see, I'm not the end all be all of whether something is quote unquote colorblind friendly. So there are a lot of things being done. A few more examples of Button Shy Games is a particularly good company when it comes to this. Everything from Tussy Mussy to Sprawlopolis and kind of the whole Opolis series does a really nice job, kind of subtly providing double coding, something that most gamers may not need. Another perfect example of that subtle double coding is the Isle of Cats. This is designed by Frank West. It does a couple of things really well. One is it incorporates double coding into the animal designs themselves, so they're shaped differently. And this happens both on the cards or any other the polyominoes, and then also the meeples that are used. You know that a certain cat is a blue cat because it's blue, also because it's shaped in a certain way. Its ears and its tail are different. They're rounded and puffier than the purple cat, which is maybe more spiky or pointed. And so there's ways that I can discern between the two cats that might be different from some other gamers that are primarily using color. The other thing Isle of Cats does really well is it actually provides a very specific player aid for colorblind gamers, so they can maintain that autonomy during the play. I don't have to ask other people all the time what color something is because I have this special tool. Then the other way that we can navigate this is modifying games. And this can make some people nervous. It's something I've gotten way more comfortable with over the last few years, is taking out a Sharpie or taking out something and actually changing my game or quote unquote defacing my game so that I can play it. I very much don't consider it damaging the game in any way because the game in the box is not a game for me. It's a bunch of components that I can't use. So being able to use simple tools, I often will use just little dots or marks or dashes on cards for me to be able to tell the difference between certain games. Some examples I've written about over the last several years where I've done this are Century Spice Road, My Little Scythe, Mandala Stones, Viticulture, Pandemic Hot Zone North America, just a few that I've marked up my components so that I could see them more easily. Then the other step, especially for those of us who are primarily consumers, is just reading reviews. I just had a experience over this last weekend that was very just frustrating and frankly kind of sad, to where I'd spent a couple hours unboxing and getting Role Player Adventures by Thunderworks Games all set up and ready to go. Was watching some videos, was really just gung-ho getting ready to go start a solo campaign of this very big, very long game. And got into the first encounter and I just could not read the skill check chart because it was entirely based on colors, and the dice are all different colors, but there's virtually maybe no double coding in that game, which is just particularly frustrating of a game that was produced in 2021 to be something that I just can't play. And the ability to even fix or mark up that game is going to be a pretty heavy lift for someone, friend or family, to help with that. So instead of that, I box it back up, probably going to either give that one away or sell it, and then find one of any other dungeon crawl type games that I think I can play. So that's unfortunate. Definitely a difficult experience to invest both time, money, and frankly, mostly excitement and emotion around getting ready to dive into something that I was pretty pumped up about and had a full weekend to dive into, and just have that fall flat when I literally just could not play the game. So with that, would love to continue the conversation. You can find me, as always, on the Tabletop Express Discord, at my website, colorblindgames.com, and then on various socials. Just search for my name, Brian Chandler, or Colourblind Games. You'll be able to find me. Thanks again, and look forward to talking to you in the future. Take care.
Hello, my name is Alex, and I write board game reviews over at meepleandmoose.com, and I'm excited to be contributing to the Talkin Tabletop Podcast. I know I'm not alone when I say that I don't get to play board games as often as I would like. Between being a parent, a husband, and an employee, my hobby time feels like it's constantly shrinking, and it's the first thing that I choose to cut when something comes up. My first fallback when I'm experiencing a drought of board games is to go on to Board Game Arena. Personally, I don't really like playing with random strangers, so I never join games unless I'm invited or it's arranged outside the site, such as like on a Discord server. I don't know why accepting an invite from someone on the Nerd Shelf's Discord server is different as opposed to just joining an open table for the game I'm wanting to play, but it is. Actually, I do know why it's different. It's because every time I join a random open table, I get obliterated. In both Race for the Galaxy and Tobago, I would join an open table excited to learn a new game, only to be matched up against someone with hundreds, if not thousands, of games under their belt. Those kinds of experiences chase me away from playing with random strangers. That being said, Board Game Arena isn't actually a long-term sustainable fix for my board game habit. Eventually, I yearn to have the physical pieces in my hands, and when I can't play games, I seek ways to acquire new-to-me games. I constantly have to remind myself that buying games does not equal time to play games. When I can't play games, sometimes I feel like the only way that I can engage with the hobby that I love is by buying these games. Retail therapy is a real thing that taps into my little lizard brain and gives me a rush of happiness. Adding items to my board game bliss cart or popping into my friendly local game store can make me feel those same happy feelings as I felt when I was last playing games with my friends. Unfortunately, these feelings also are not an adequate replacement for the hobby that I enjoy so much. And it can even kick off a downward spiral of shame when I'm staring down a shelf of unplayed games. I tell myself that I get a lot of joy out of unboxing and organizing games. I do love the feeling of punching out the cardboard tokens from their sprues and the satisfaction of having a game perfectly organized and ready to play it. I justify my purchases by saying I'll play it solo, but honestly my solo games are few and far between. What really inspired this podcast segment is when I considered my board game acquisitions over the past few months. At the end of November, my partner and I had a baby, and I've only been out to my regular game group like once since he's been born. But in that time, I've bought like 12 new games. 5 of them I bought used for a really good price, and 5 of them came in via math trade. But now my shelf of shame has grown dramatically during a period where I'm just not playing many board games. I don't really have a conclusion for this segment. I don't have any answers, but I just wanted to contribute this podcast in the hopes that if someone else is feeling the same way or having the same experiences, to know that you're just not alone. The best I can offer is to suggest to look for opportunities to engage with this hobby in ways that make you feel connected. If you lack a regular gaming group and are filling your hobby needs with consumerism, consider joining some board game Discord channels or engage with your favorite board game content creators on social media. This isn't inherently a social hobby, and engaging with others who are equally as passionate about board games as you are creates some special bonds that can lift your spirits when life otherwise gets you down. Just be aware of the FOMO that comes when those content creators go to large conventions and post their haul picks. It's absolutely unreasonable to go and buy 30 to 50 games at one time, and if it's not obviously disclosed in the haul pick somehow, I highly suggest asking for clarification on which games they received for free and which games they paid for themselves. It can help dispel the illusion that buying dozens of games at one time is reasonable or sustainable. And that's all for me today. If you want to read my board game reviews, you can find them on my blog, meepleandthemoose.com. You can follow me on Blue Sky. If you need an invite code, you can email me at meepleandthemoose@gmail.com. And have a happy Wednesday.
Hey there, Talkin Tabletop Podcast. This is Chris Barrows with the Tabletop Express here, and I'm not actually joined for this week's segment by Ryan Espin. I got someone else in the queue. Hey Dan, why don't you say hi?
Hey Chris, it's Dan Nixon. We're both on the first week of the podcast, so coming back for a second one, and we thought we'd do a little tag team.
Yeah, I'm excited. I mean, I think part of what we really wanted to do was kind of tell that story of connecting through board games, right? Because you and I connected at PAX Unplugged in 2022. We were both over at Rock Manor Games. They did, it was actually kind of unique. If I remember correctly, they booked a hotel, like a hotel conference space instead of the convention area. I imagine it was significantly cheaper, but they had the games like set up on the table, and you had I think an hour-long session that we ended up attending together, of not knowing each other obviously at the time, and we got 3 games that we got to see. It was really different from my memory than anything I'd seen before with PAX Unplugged.
Yeah, and 22 was the first year where I actually did content creator / media stuff, and Rock Manor was one of the first things I did. So I'm like, oh, this is just how it is. And 2022 was the year where we had to be masked, but being outside of the main convention center and in the hotel, we could unmask. There was the 3 games. We went to each game for about 20 minutes, talked to I believe 2 of the creators, and one of them was just a guy who was helping out who didn't create Seas of Havoc, but he was talking about it. But Mike was there, Todd was there talking about Set a Watch and Maximum Apocalypse, and luckily enough, we sat down at the same table.
Yeah, we just happened to sit next to each other, and it's funny because now obviously I'm talking to you all the time on the Tabletop Express Discord, where we're so many folks, and I know many who listen here hang out, but it was a neat experience. And then I thought it was really cool because as we came into PAX Unplugged for 2023, we said, let's do it again. And it really, I mean, it's fair to say if Rock Manor's got a new game, you're not going to go check it out at this point. It's
tradition.
It's now tradition, right?
Yeah.
This year, what was it? It was, I'm bringing it up here. It was, let's see, Star Driven Gateway.
Yes.
Which again, I'll just note, the name didn't grab me, but I enjoyed the basic. We had a game that we played of it, and we had a good time with this one. It was definitely a different game assigning. I like the fact that in this game, I'll note that you could assign like different crews to your ship, and you actually were using the crews differently. It wasn't just like a random crew member and they all played the same way, which I feel like a lot of games did. But yeah, I like that we got here and we did Star Driven Gateway and we made this a tradition, right? And I think that's kind of the point that, and one of the reasons we wanted to record together was, man, gaming is a great way to meet people. And, we're obviously just one example, but I mean, if you're willing to put yourself out there, I mean, look what can happen, and you can gain friendship from it, which I just think it's just a great thing. And it's a big reason why I like board games.
Yeah, exactly. And, going to the conventions, on the media pass, maybe you're going more than you would go with your game group who wants to go like one day. So, I'm going solo for some of the days. So like when I sit down at Rock Manor and, sit next to you, find out about Tabletop Express, a couple weeks down the line, find you on YouTube, start calling in on Call of Board, get on the Discord, talking to everyone. And then you just, especially in the Discord, I feel like you're more open to talking about things, even beyond board games. And that just, we both had some pretty crappy times in 2023 and maybe even back to 2022. And I feel like you're more willing to talk to that faceless stranger on Discord a little bit, maybe more. And then eventually when you do meet up, like we met up with a lot of people the Saturday of this year's PAX, it's just so much fun to actually meet the people in person, sit and talk with them, play a game, and just be like, oh, so how is work going?
There's a component to it, and there's a lot of great Discord communities. I'm obviously biased and most active in the one that I'm managing, but there's some other ones that I'm a part of and I kind of jump into when I can, and I've met great people there, and it's become a thing where there is a name that for some people I want to put a face to in person, but it is a great experience to do it. But you do, I think, feel in those moments it's more personal, right? In that sense, you feel a little bit more likely to tell those stories, right, and connect outside of the gaming world. But in the same time, I mean, ultimately, it's funny how it often comes back to the gaming part, right?
Yeah.
You say, hey, did you play that game, by the way? I know you got this in. But the thing that I actually picked up on was we also start to learn each other's tastes. Like, I think the running joke is, obviously Anthony on our channel, you and Anthony tend to like a lot of same stuff. So fun things like that happen. You're like, oh yeah, if Anthony likes something, there's a good chance you're going to like it. And you start to learn that a little bit better with that connection that you can make with people. So that's the other part about connecting in the board game industry and the board game space, the board game hobby. It really depends what you're doing. And if you're just someone who's playing games, it's really just the board game hobby. When you talk industry, when you start getting on this media side and you start meeting some of these people, and it is a little bit of a different game at times, but it's still all about those connections. So I appreciate that greatly. And again, I will say Rock Manor Games, I am grateful to them for that in the sense that I like their games, but more so the stories I can now tell of people I've connected with over their games.
Yeah, and the funny thing about Rock Manor specifically is Rock Manor is 20 minutes from where I live. I've met up with Mike, and he's let me know, like, hey, when we got some play tests, I'm like, yo, I got a group that'll play test whatever you got. We have a monthly gaming group that we get together, and Todd is in Westchester, so we're like, I'm like, that's where our gaming group is. We're like down the street from you, basically. So it's cool that you get to make, like you're saying, you're making those connections. You're bringing them into your gaming world as they brought you into theirs with their games and just play testing, and it's just cool that people, especially older in age, can make friends that easy, hang out, have that common thing of gaming, and that's all you really need to hang out sometimes.
Yeah, and I think not everyone is. I know not everyone is an extrovert, but I will just say it's one of those things. When you can sit down at a table and play games, you never know what's going to happen. We did say we want to talk about games a little bit, so
yeah,
I'd say if we can maybe each take a minute here. I did want to mention a Rock Manor game that we did play. We didn't get to play it together, but we got to witness it, get an overview of it together. That was Rock Manor's Seas of Havoc. It's a 2023 game. And I wanted to talk a little bit about this one on the podcast because I got a chance to solo this. I'm yet to play this actually with a group of people, but I'm really excited by it because it is one of these games that has that programming aspect to it, but you have more control, which is what I really liked about it, because programming can be frustrating, but you have that extra layer of control in this one. So you're trying to earn this renown to be this legend of the seas, but to be the ability to control where you're going on the board a little bit better, with some basic worker placement functionality. I just thought this was a nice mix of everything. I'm not going to claim I built my treasure chests well in one came out okay. The other one I just trashed because I destroyed it. But the gameplay in this one was just really neat. And there was a ton of replayability in it. So I want to get this on the table in 2024 with more people. So I'm not just soloing it, but I just encourage people to check this out because you are playing cards in this game. And I just think it's a unique combination of card play and worker placement in a world with a lot of different pirate games.
Yeah. And, you got the asynchronous powers with the different captains, the different ships. And you said you've only played it one time with the solo. I can't wait to either myself play or hear what you play when the Sea Monsters come out. That's a cool expansion.
Yeah, the Sea Monsters expansion. That's a cool thing.
Yeah, and the game that I wanted to talk about with Rock Manor was Set a Watch, which is one of the games that we did demo. Again, we didn't get to play it, but we got to see it played back in 2022, which is basically it's your in D&D when rest for the night, and you set your watch, and you're like, okay, nothing really happens, or okay, something happens. Well, this is that, and a lot of bad things happen at night. And they set up the deck. You have your different worker placement, not really worker placement, but your actions that you can take with the dice that you rolled. And then the person who's doing the camp actions to like make the fire higher or trade out equipment or heal people, he doesn't participate in the attacking with the creature. So the other 3 people then have to use that puzzle of, here's my dice, here are my abilities. We need to see these creatures. The fire's only letting us see 2. There's 9 out here. How are we going to survive this? They're going to kill us. I have yet to beat this game.
It's hard.
It is.
I tried this out off one of those demos, and oh my goodness, it's a tough game, but it's very fun to play solo, which what and I found the setup of it easier than say Final Girl, which is
a lot easier.
It's the comparison I was making because the boxes are similar in that sense. But no, it's a really enjoyable one, and there's 3 different. There's I think two expansions you could call them, or that I guess they're all I forget if they're all playable, or if you need the main set of watch to.
I think all the expansions are playable, and the latest one, Doomed Run, puts a lot more than just an expansion. I think there's a lot more going on with that one. I don't think that's delivered yet, but I'm pretty sure the campaign was over. But yeah, just getting more characters, more monster cards, I'm in for it. And yeah, solo it, or even when I played it, I did play it with 4 people. And there's a lot of, well, I can do this, but you can do this, and we can do this, and then someone goes, no, but we can do this.
Yeah,
yes, do that.
I can appreciate what this, even though it was not a D&D guy, I can appreciate this one. But yeah, those are some Rock Manor games, again, to draw back to our connection, Dan, that we have with Rock Manor. And I just want to say, once again, glad to be part of this podcast. Please come say hello to myself and the Tabletop Express crew over on YouTube. Just look up Tabletop Express. You can even go to tabletopexpress.com, and you're actually going to go right to our YouTube. Also would note, call in. We got a call-in show. Call aboard. We'd love to hear people call in, especially those new callers. So come on over and say hi. So that's what we're up to over here. And I know, Dan, you've got some good stuff going on too.
Yeah, I've been writing for a little bit over a year for a website called Gate Crashers. Their whole goal is to help a user find their next big, obsession: board games, comics, horror movies, TV shows, anything. They want to help you find it. They don't want to they don't want to gatekeep. They want to crash that gate. And then most recently, I've been writing with Comic Book Yeti, who as well, normally just a comic book review place, but they're expanding their horizons as well into the culture. I'm the one helping with the tabletop stuff, and got a couple articles coming out, one of them specifically being a Rock Manor specific article. So
awesome.
Very, very good to do.
Awesome. Well, thanks again for having us on the podcast, and definitely will be back for the next episode.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Chris. Thanks, Ryan.
Hi everyone, it's Danielle. I am happy to be back on the Talkin Tabletop Podcast this week. If you don't know me, I do run a YouTube channel called DaniCha, DaniCha, and I focus on solo board gaming. If you're interested in any form of solo board games, definitely check me out. I have unboxings and playthroughs, and sometimes live streams. So if you're interested in any of that, feel free to look me up on YouTube, and I hope to see you there. As for today's topic, I will be discussing some games that I enjoy traveling with, or hypothetically, I would travel with. Since COVID, I actually have not been traveling too much, but these are games that would easily fit in a carry-on if I were to travel, or even in a little backpack as well. So in no particular order, I do have 5 games I'm going to highlight. The first one being A Gentle Rain. So this game came out in 2021. And it is a very nice, small, easy to travel game. It's abstract, and relaxing. The designer is Kevin Wilson, and I am loving this game. I play it once a week or so, if not more, depending on, just how many breaks I'm willing to take from work. But yeah, this is a puzzle game, a solo-only game, and it is a really beautiful, pleasant experience. So what you would do in this game is that you're trying to place lake tiles in a way that would cause the 8 different types of lilies to bloom before you run out of tiles and the rain ends. So essentially, you're placing tiles down, you're matching the lilies to the matching half of the lily on another tile. And once you create a little hole or a little circle to place a flower tile, then you'd be able to hopefully do it for all 8 lilies that would eventually bloom, and then you'd win the game. There is a scoring system where basically you count how many tiles you have left. So say you win the game with 4 tiles, you actually add 8 to that and your points would be 12. So you could try to beat your own score, although I think the highest score you could get is 21. And you'd have to be very lucky to get that perfect score. I think that's the tightest you can actually play this game with. But yeah, a gentle rain, very easy to bring with you, and I recommend it if you can find it. I think there's going to be a reprint coming soon, so if you are interested, definitely look out for that. The second game I have here is Puzzle Dungeon, published back in 2019, designed by Brian Garber. And this was actually one of the first and only games I ever bought off of Etsy. It's not from a publisher specifically, but from Etsy, which I think is pretty neat. So Brian Garber actually is the artist as well for the game, so he customizes all the looks and feels of the monsters, the hunters and everything in his game, which I think is fantastic. I also love the fact that he does custom card work. So I sent him 2 pictures of 2 cats I had at the time, and I gave them characteristics of my cats as well. And he was able to create this awesome custom character for each of my cats, and I love it. It was a very cool experience to have that custom factor in a game that I really enjoy. So this game is Puzzle Dungeon. It is a solo game, and it is mainly card based. So you have a bunch of cards. You'll be laying out 20 monster cards, and then you're going to be laying them out in a way that you can only really attack 4 of them at a time. And then you're going to be choosing to be I think you're a hunter essentially. So you choose a character, and it has a special ability, but it also tells you which types of monsters you would need to defeat to fulfill the game. So lots of replayability. I love the fact that it comes with so many different characters to play with. And even the monsters, depending on how the monsters are laid out, it's a different game every time you play. And this one is just really easy to bring around. It's like a deck of cards. Very, very much a easy to bring type of game. And if you like kind of like the 8-bit type art, this game is for you. Next, I'll be talking about Crumbs, the sandwich filler game, a game that was published in 2024. And this is designed by Jay Anshel. And I got to preview this game. I think it's a lovely little card game. It is a solo co-op game, so 1 to 2 players. It is an 18-card puzzle game. So you're trying to make sandwiches throughout the game, and I just love the cards. The cards are, very simply designed, but there's cheese, there's salad, avocado, salmon, egg, bread, and ham, and you're trying to fulfill orders. And yeah, that's pretty much the game. So you're completing a number of orders depending on your difficulty, and then you'd win the game. So it's really, really simple. It's definitely a puzzly game, and you don't win every single one, but it's pleasant, and it's something fun you could play during your lunch break, or even when you're traveling on the train and you have a little table. Very easy to bring along with you. So that's Crumbs, the sandwich filler game. Next, we have Micro City, 2nd edition. So this one was published in 2020 and designed by Mikhail Jagodzinski and Camille Langy. And this isn't a game I hear too much about, but it is a small box, which makes it easy to travel with. There are cards, there's dice rolling, hand management, worker placement, which I think are a lot of different mechanics I actually enjoy in the games I play solo. This game is 1 to 2 players, so I think BGG recommends it to be played as a solo game. So I do want to preface that I've only played it solo, so I don't know how well it plays 2 players. But yeah, this is a very cool game. You're basically trying to build a city. And there's different challenges you can do, different difficulty levels, which help with the replayability of this game. All right, and then the last game I'll talk about is called Dice Cards. So this one is a 2023 game. I backed this one a while ago, and I was able to do the PNP, but then it actually came out with the physical version. So this is a roll and write game. Best for 1 player, it says on BGG. This is designed by Tucker Smeeds. Yeah, I really like it. It's basically like bringing around a deck of cards, especially if it's just 1 player, is even less, because if it's 2 players, you bring 2 deck of cards. But anyway, each of these cards would have, it's 50 unique cards, and they each have their own scoring mini game. If you're familiar with Rolling Realms, it's very similar, but I actually really like dice cards because it seems a little more simple than a realm in Rolling Realms to grasp and play. And so I think it's easier to teach new players how to play. And also on the backside of each of the cards, it shows you exactly how to play. It gives you an example of how you would score and how it works. So I really like that aspect of it. I feel like sometimes Rolling Realms, you have to like read it 10 times to really understand how to play, and you still might even get it wrong. But yeah, dice cards I found to be very, very pleasant to play. I think even for kids, ages 7 and up, I guess, like it's a very good family game too if you're interested. I did say it's a good solo game, but it is stated to be 1 to 99 players, so there's that as well. But again, this is a roll and write. You're rolling 2 dice, and you're choosing a number to record on each turn, and you're only choosing 1 number. So between the 2 numbers, you could choose 1 of the dice, or you could choose both of them and add up the numbers on each dice. So very interesting aspect to that. Definitely recommend dice cards if you're looking to travel with a large group. I think this would be a fun one. But yeah, I think that's all I got this week. I hope you enjoyed learning about some games that hopefully you haven't played yet. Feel free to check them out. I do have videos, I think, on just about every one of the games that I've mentioned. So again, DaniCha is my YouTube channel. Thank you, Ryan, for having me on the podcast, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.
Daniel here for Tabletop for One, and back for another episode on the Talkin Tabletop Podcast. And I thank Ryan from Mista Rau Gaming for having me once again. And so today I want to talk about something that's near and dear to me. I want to talk about the crossover between mental health and board gaming. You see, I've suffered from severe anxiety and depression over the years, and I found that board games can actually be an activity that helps me through some of the darker times. See, board games offer me an opportunity, a moment in time to where I can, maybe adventure in other worlds or solve puzzles or even solve crises and crisis management type games. When you're in depression and anxiety, it's such an isolating thing to have, and it makes it feel like you can't get anything done. Time seems to go by day after day. You're unaware of, even what day it is or what time it is, or even what you're supposed to do each day. But when you're able to take a board game, a puzzle game or a crisis management game or an adventure game, something like that, that gives you defined goals and ways to achieve those goals, it really kind of helps you through this slump that you're in. I don't know if that's the right word for it, but it kind of helps you through, giving you this chance to solve a puzzle or to solve a crisis. And then you can actually turn that into real life experience by solving your own crisis in your own life. And so I really find that board games can help bridge that gap between my depression and anxiety and getting through each day and actually being successful each day in some way. So I'm very much thankful that board games give me that opportunity, and I know I'm not alone in this, and I don't want anyone else to feel alone in this. Because like I said before, depression can be so isolating because you feel like nobody understands you. But I'm there. I deal with it daily, and so many others as well. And I know many of you out there deal with it as well. And so I hope you find some sort of solace in the hobby, some peace, or just the ability to escape the dark times in your life and be able to jump into these adventures, into these stories, into these puzzles, and find the way through the darkness and make you feel like you can actually accomplish something. And you can, you really can. See, when you are able to accomplish these things, you find out that you actually have the potential to do so. And having that potential is so important in working your way through depression and anxiety. Depression wants to tell you that you don't have the potential, that you can't get up when you've fallen down. But the fact is that you do. And when these board games give you that opportunity to see that you have the potential to do more, to do better, to solve puzzles, to fix crises, then you realize that you can stand up when you fall down. Then you realize that you can live the next day even when you don't want to. And so I love that. I love how board games provide that. And I love that so many others have found that as well. And so with that in mind, I want to talk about some of the games that help me through darker times. And many of those games, like I said, are crisis management games or puzzle games. So one of those is the Turing Machine. The Turing Machine is this great solitaire game that involves logic deduction. And you're trying to deduce a number of, 3 different numbers based off of certain criteria. And you use these really cool punch cards to figure out different clues and try and deduce those numbers. And so Turing Machine provides this moment where I can solve a puzzle, and it's customizable on its difficulty. So you can do it on the easy mode or do it on the hard mode, and there's like 7 million different puzzles to solve. And so it only takes about 15 minutes to play. The game itself is affordable at about $40, I think it is. And yeah, it's such a great game for solving puzzles. If you like logic deduction, this is one of the best ones out there. So I highly recommend it. As for crisis management games, there's a few different choices. On the easier side or on the lighter side, Marvel United is fantastic. It's such a great game. It's on the lighter side, it has these awesome miniatures, and basically, you're taking one of the Marvel superheroes. Well, multiple superheroes. You play like around 2 or 3. I usually play 3, and you'll move them around the board, and you're trying to fight thugs and rescue civilians, and all the while you're trying to stop the villain. And so you have to work towards defeating the villain, and if you defeat the villain, you win the game. And so not only is this game great for crisis management, but it's also great for painting. Those miniatures are so easy to paint that any beginner can do it and feel like they've done a great job because the miniatures are that easy to paint. And painting is a very therapeutic tool, and it's very helpful with mental health issues. And so I highly recommend it. If you're looking into trying to paint, you can usually find Marvel United very cheaply. I've seen it for like $10, maybe $20 at Noble Knight. They usually have it on sale for real cheap, so I would check it out there. But yeah, I highly recommend that one. If you're looking for something heavier, then go no further than Spirit Island. Spirit Island will always be one of my recommendations for not only puzzly gameplay, but for crisis management gameplay. It combines both those well together, and it provides a very satisfying experience, and it makes you feel like you can get through the harder times because, at the beginning of Spirit Island, it's very difficult to play. And it feels like the invaders are getting far too ahead, but then you are able to build up your spirit and overcome those invaders. And it's just fantastic. It gives you a sense of accomplishment and makes you feel good about what you've done. And so I'm just going to leave you there with those 3 recommendations for games that have helped me mentally get through some of the darker times. And I will always pick those off my shelf to play them to help me during those times. And so with that, I wish you well and wish you peace in your life. And thank you for listening to me on the Talkin Tabletop Podcast.
Thank you, everybody, for all your awesome contributions this time around again on the Talking Tabletop Podcast. Listening back and doing the edits on this episode really resonated with me that we do have such a wonderful community of board gamers that are bringing in so many different interesting perspectives around this hobby. Something that really resonated with me was Daniel Anderson's topic of the mental health state of some of our board gamers and people that are in this hobby. And I commend him and thank him for his perspective that he provided in his segment. It is not something that's usually not very easy to talk about, and I know this from experience because I am also someone that does suffer sometimes from some mental health problems that do come around. I do also suffer from anxiety, and I have to talk to a counselor every now and then, and I have some medications that I am on to help me manage my anxiety levels throughout different aspects of my life. And board games, like I'll reiterate from him, board games are an amazing way for me to like unwind and decompress and be able to hone my ability to, just try to relax and work through a puzzle or work through some sort of situation, again, to take my mind off and get me into a better state of mind as a person. So board games and this podcast and my YouTube channel have all been really great creative outlets for me to manage my anxiety levels and my stress levels and everything else. So I commend that to Daniel for being able to share his story, share his experiences with us. Once again, it was really, really inspiring to hear about, and it's a very important topic that we need to address a little bit more around the hobby as well. On to my segment for this week's Talking Tabletop podcast episode is I'm actually just going to provide a couple little mini reviews of some games that I've been playing lately that have been on my mind that I can't stop thinking about, which is generally a good thing because, as I've mentioned on my updates on my channel, I'm kind of refocusing how I'm going to be doing things on the channel, allowing for more repeated plays of things because I really want to explore. The one thing that I get a lot of joy out of is exploring board games and what they have to offer and the different strategies that they have. So I thought I'd talk about a couple games that I have not stopped thinking about as I've been playing them lately. The first game that I am going to talk about today is I'm going to talking about Nar from Pandasaurus Games, designed by Thomas DuPont with art by Antoine Carrion. And Nar is a really interesting it's a card playing game. It's a tableau builder and resource contract fulfillment style game, and it's also got a little bit of engine building built into it where you're just going to be the points that you score are going to start cascading onto one another. Let me step back and let me tell you a little bit about Nar. So essentially it is a card collecting game where you have these 5 different, I think, ranks or styles of Viking cards that you are going to be assembling a crew of to eventually go off on some adventures to some lands of trading and some lands of influence. And certain voyages are going to require certain types of Vikings to be able to go on to those voyages. So that's where you're going to start collecting. You're going to start collecting the colors, and as you play them down, each card has some sort of resource that it's going to give you. It's going to be either victory points or these bracelets, or it's actually going to give you little tokens that I call them the Wild Vikings. I believe they're referred to as recruits, or they're actually going to give you some reputation. And whenever you play down a card out of your hand, you will gain the benefit at the top of the card. And if you've played another card of the same color previously, you're also going to gain the benefits of that card as well. So, for example, if I've played down a red card, that gives me a victory point, and previously I played down a red card that also gave me a reputation, well, when I play down that second card, I'm going to get a victory point and a reputation at the same time. So that's one thing you can be doing on your turns. You're going to be playing down the cards. And I must mention that you always have a hand of 3 cards at all times. When I go to play down a card, I get to actually now recruit a card from the card market. And the card market is all labeled. All the cards are out there, all the different colors. But then there's also labels of the different colors of the ranks. So if I play down a red card, I have to recruit the card that is in the red column to add it back into my hand. Now, there's certain ways that I can mitigate that. I can be spending recruits in order to select Vikings of different that are not part of my card that I just ended up playing down. But essentially, that's exactly how the card plays. You're going to play down a card, and then you're going to get to draw back up a card. The other thing that you can do on your turn is that you can actually send your Vikings off onto these voyages to the different lands. Now, the lands will have some sort of requirements, like the certain types of Vikings, like 2 green Vikings and 2 red Vikings or something, or that has to have 4 Vikings of different colors, or it could even have 1 of every color. So you're going to take all your Viking cards that you have played, maybe some recruit tiles. Those recruit tiles, like I said, they're wild. They can count as anything. And then you're going to go off on these voyages, and then there's voyages are either going to give you victory points, other resources, some sort of combination of all of them. But importantly, they're actually going to get tucked above your player board. You have like a little tiny player board, and they have depicted of 3 columns, and in those columns could be some resources. This is where the bracelets are going to come in, because then at the end of your turn, you can trade in some bracelets. If you trade in 1 bracelet, you can take all the benefits of the very first column. However big it is, you're going to get all of the benefits. If you trade in 2 bracelets, you get 2 columns worth of benefits. And if you trade in 3 bracelets, you get all 3 columns of benefits, which can all be, they really range from victory points to more recruits to reputations. Again, lots of little variants, and that's where the little bit of engine building is going to come in, because you're going to build up those columns. The more and more you go venturing out onto those lands, those columns are going to get really, really large, full of lots of great bonuses, and eventually you're going to trade in your bracelets to go get those resources. This is all in the name of the first person to score 40 points is going to trigger the end of the game. Points are very hard to come by in the very early game, but man, oh man, like I said, the little bit of engine building to the game, that starts cascading really quite quickly. As soon as people start building up a little bit of engine, how they're going to score some points, maybe they're constantly getting bracelets and then cashing them in to score points because they've went on these voyages. Or the reputation track. Maybe you advance on this reputation track where the farther you get along that reputation track, you actually start scoring points just automatically at the beginning of your turn. Lots of really cool little moving parts in a little game that takes about 15 to 20 minutes to play. Like, it is super quick, super fast. I've played this now mostly at 2 players. Really enjoy this as a 2-player kind of head-to-head back and forth card game. I've played it now with 4 players, and it takes a little bit more time, but the play is still really quite snappy, as in you've only got the 2 decisions to make on your turn. You're either going to be playing down some cards, grabbing those benefits, or you're going to be cashing in the cards that you've played in order to go out on those voyages, and also getting a lot of benefits from doing those. So really, really interesting game. You can play it on Board Game Arena if you would like to play with me. I am just Mista Rau on Board Game Arena. I've played this now a few times, and it works really, really well there as well. I think Pandasaurus Games has themselves a nice little card game hit that I can't wait for more people to get their hands on. Another game that I've been playing a little bit lately that I also just featured on my stream this past week is a game called World Wonders from Z Mendes and published by Arcane Wonders. World Wonders is a fantastic little polyomino Tetris style tile laying game where you're going to be building out a civilization by, building roads and city districts. And, by building out those city districts, you're going to be increasing your agriculture, arts, and technology of your little civilization. And eventually, you'll have enough stuff on your board that you might be able to construct these monuments and wonders, which is a little bit of a contract fulfillment because those wonders need restrictions. They have restrictions on what they can be built next to. And so hopefully you've planned out your turn correctly, that you have enough roads, enough city districts of the right type that those wonders can go beside. Turn go by really quite nicely. Every player has 7 gold at the start of their turn. These different districts are going to cost you anywhere between 2 to 5 gold in order to purchase them. There's other things that you can purchase, like roads that are going to cost you a gold each. You can build towers that allow you to like build next to anything, but then you can also extend your roads off of towers, because there is a lot of restrictions on where things can be built and where things cannot be built, which is a nice, interesting piece of the puzzle. And this game has that interesting aspect of the not really non-direct player interaction, but other than, man, oh man, that person just snagged that tile that I was going to work perfectly in my board and everything like that, and now I have to shift gears because I needed that tile to really go after that one monument, and now that person's going to get that monument, so now I have to shift gears completely. Really provides you some really interesting moments along that way. The game only lasts 10 rounds, or if somebody's population track gets up to, I think it is, if just to flip it over here, on the one side of the player board is whether or not they get to 12, and the other side is to 14. You can play whichever side you want. It is a very, very interesting game. On my stream, I played solo. The solo mode works really, really well. It's a very easy to manage and does simulate the players taking things away from you, possibly sooner than what you really, really wanted. So World Wonders ranks really quite high amongst the polyomino style games that you will play. I don't know. It doesn't do anything groundbreaking, but I just can't stop thinking about it, because it is a very neat and simple game that does have quite a bit of depth and strategy to it in order to, plan out your districts just right so that you can fit those monuments onto your player board just right, because it takes a lot, because these boards, man, just to optimally score your points, they're very hard to fit in. Okay, so those are a couple little mini reviews, little mini things that I have to say about NAR and World Wonders. I would like you to check them out if you ever have a chance to come across them in your board gaming travels. I'd like to thank everybody once again for joining us on this Talkin Tabletop podcast. I have been Ryan from Mista Rau Gaming over on YouTube. Give me a like, comment, and subscribe while you're over there. And of course, I am also across most of the social medias, Facebook, Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky is where I am, and I'm also on the Tabletop Express Discord server. If you would like any information about any of these things, please contact me at Mista Rau Gaming or MistaRauGaming@gmail.com. Even if you would like to be a contributor to the Talking Tabletop podcast, we would love to have you on. You do not need to be a content creator. Do you have something that's just on your mind that you would like to share with a larger audience? Please get a hold of me, and I will set you up on how you can submit your own segment to the Talking Tabletop podcast. All right, everybody. Well, I'm going to wish you a very happy morning, afternoon, evening, whenever you've decided to watch this. I thank you once again for joining us for the Talking Tabletop podcast, and we will see you once again in 2 weeks' time, which I believe is Valentine's Day. Don't want to miss that one episode. Cheers, everybody. Thanks for listening.